My best friend ran a loyalty test on my husband without telling me. He failed completely. Now I'm losing my marriage and my friendship at the same time, and the only person I'm not angry at is my stepson. Posted to r/true off my chest. I need to start with Diane because, without Diane, none of this makes sense. Diane has been my best friend for 11 years. We met at work, stayed close through job changes and moves, and the ordinary turbulence of adult life. I was at her wedding. I was at the hospital when her son was born. I was the person she called at 2 in the morning when she found out her husband Marcus had been living a double life for most of their marriage. Another woman, money hidden, lies so thorough and architectural that Diane said afterward it felt less like a betrayal and more like a demolition. Something structural had been removed, and everything built on top of it had come down. That was 3 years ago. Marcus is gone. Their divorce was brutal in the way of divorces involving sustained deception, and Diane came out of it with her son, her apartment, her job, and a view of men that had been, in her words, permanently updated. I understood that. I grieved with her. I watched her rebuild, and I was proud of her for rebuilding, and I thought I understood what the experience had done to her. I did not understand all of it. My husband's name is Ryan. We have been married for 4 years. Before me, he was in a long relationship that ended a few years before we met, in the ordinary way of two people who wanted different things and figured it out too late to save themselves the years they had spent. He has a son from that relationship, Connor, who is 15, who splits his time between Ryan and his mother, who I have been a stepmother to for the 3 years since Ryan and I married. Connor is not peripheral to this story. I want to say that, at the outset, he is, in fact, the part of this story I think about the longest and the hardest. Ryan works in finance. He travels occasionally for work, not frequently, and in 4 years of marriage I have had no reason, not one, not a feeling, not a single instance, to question where he was or who he was with. He is attentive in the consistent, daily way that tells you more about a person than grand gestures do. He remembers things. He shows up. He is the kind of husband I had stopped believing in before I met him. He is also, as I discovered 11 days ago, a man who will send intimate photographs to a woman he believes he is falling for, who will tell her things about our marriage that were not hers to know, who will make a hotel reservation and show up to it, who will get as far as the hotel room door. Diane created a fake profile. A man because she was building something specifically targeted, because she understood what she was doing required a particular shape. The name she used was Daniel. The photographs she used were from a stock account, a conventionally attractive man in his late 30s, the kind of profile that reads as real because it is assembled with care. She messaged Ryan through a professional networking platform because she knew from conversations with me that Ryan was active on it and occasionally connected with people he met at industry events. The message was professionally framed. A shared connection. An interest in his work. Ryan replied. Of course he replied. It was a professional platform and the message was professional, and there was no reason not to reply. What happened over the following 6 weeks I know from 2 sources. Diane, who told me everything when she finally told me, and Ryan, who told me his version when I confronted him. The 2 versions are compatible in their facts and different only in their framing, which is the way confessions usually work. Diane, escalated the conversation gradually. From professional to personal. From personal to flirtatious. She researched Ryan carefully using what I had told her across years of friendship, his interests, his insecurities, the parts of himself he kept quieter than the rest. She knew he had always felt slightly out of his depth around the finance industry's old guard social networks, that he was self-made in a context that valued inheritance, that he was proud of his body in the way of someone who works hard for it and doesn't get told enough. She used these things. Precisely. In the way of someone who has mapped the terrain, because she was given the map by someone who trusted her completely. By week 4, Ryan was sending photographs. By week 5, he had said things about our marriage. Not terrible things, not scorched earth things, but the kind of private marital texture that belongs between 2 people and nowhere else. By week 6, he made a hotel reservation. He went to the hotel. He went to the room. He stood at the door. He did not go in. He stood at the door for, by his account, approximately 4 minutes. Then he went back downstairs, checked out, and drove home. He did not tell me. He deleted the conversations. He told himself it had not happened because he had not gone through the door, which is the accounting of a man who knows the accounting is wrong, and is doing it anyway because the alternative is a conversation he cannot figure out how to begin. That was 3 weeks before Diane told me. Diane told me on a Tuesday evening. She called and asked if she could come over, and I said yes because she was my best friend, and she came over and she sat at my kitchen table and she told me everything. She said she had done it because Marcus had destroyed her, and she had needed to know if men could be trusted, and she had tested the one man she had access to through me. She said she had expected Ryan to shut it down early, and that when he didn't she had kept going, because she told herself she was doing me a favor, giving me information I deserved to have. She said by the end she didn't know anymore if she was doing it for me, or for herself, or for the version of herself that needed to watch a man fail, so she could feel less alone in what Marcus had done to her. She said she was sorry. She said it multiple times, in the way of someone who knows the word is not sufficient and keeps saying it anyway because there is no other word. I sat at my own kitchen table and I listened to everything, and when she was done I asked her to leave. She left. Ryan came home an hour later. I had been sitting with what Diane had told me, turning it over, and I want to be honest about the shape of what I was feeling because I think the honesty matters. I was angry at both of them. But the angers were different. My anger at Diane was the specific, searing kind of betrayal anger. She had used the information I trusted her with, the private architecture of my marriage, to construct a weapon and point it at my husband. She had done it under the framing of loyalty testing, which is a thing I have always found contemptible because it is surveillance dressed as care. And she had done it from a wound Marcus gave her, which I understood, and which did not make it acceptable, which is the complicated math of loving someone who has been badly hurt, and watching them pass the hurt in a direction it was never supposed to go. My anger at Ryan was different, quieter, and in some ways more total, because Diane had done something to me. Ryan had done something to us. He had not gone through the door. I know that. I have held that fact and turned it over, and I have not been able to decide how much weight it carries. He stood at the door for 4 minutes and left. That is the fact. What it means is something I have been sitting with and have not finished sitting with. What I cannot sit with the same way is the 6 weeks before the door. The photographs. The private texture of our marriage shared with someone he believed was a stranger. The hotel reservation made with intention. He had not, in the moment of the door, been a man who had stumbled into something. He had been a man who had driven to a hotel. I told him what Diane had told me. He went very still. He said, "She told you." I said, "Tell me your version." He told me. It matched. He did not lie about the photographs or the things he had said about our marriage. He lied slightly about the timeline of when he had understood what was happening, which I think was him trying to compress the complicity, and I did not push on it because the timeline was not the point. He said, I stopped. I said, I know. He said, that has to mean something. I said, I don't know what it means yet. He said, I love you. I said, I know that too. I asked him to stay at a hotel for a few days. He did. He has been texting me every day, short messages, careful ones, present without demanding anything. I have been responding to about half of them. Connor found out. Not for me, I want to be clear about that. He found out from his mother, Dana, who found out because Ryan told her before I asked him not to, in the way people make decisions when they are in crisis without thinking through the consequences of the decision. Dana and Ryan have a functional co-parenting relationship built over years of work after a difficult split, and Ryan apparently called her in the first days after I asked him to leave because he needed to tell someone who knew him. Dana called me. She was not unkind. She said she was sorry for what I was going through. She said Connor had overheard part of the conversation and had come to her with questions, and she had told him the basics without the details. She said Connor wanted to call me. He called me the next day. He is 15 and he sounded on the phone like someone who had assembled his words carefully before dialing. He said, Dad told me what happened. I'm not asking you to tell me more than you want to. I just wanted you to know that whatever happens with you and Dad, I want to keep seeing you. You're my family. I did not cry during the conversation. I cried for about 20 minutes after it. Connor is 15. He did not create this situation. He did not fail anyone. He has a relationship with me that he has been building for 3 years, and that has nothing to do with what Ryan did in a hotel corridor on a Tuesday night, and everything to do with who he is and who I have been to him. Whatever I decide about Ryan, Connor does not lose a stepmother. I have decided that clearly, and I will not undecide it. I confronted Diane again, properly, a week after the first conversation. Not to yell. I had done my yelling in private in my car, in the parking lot of a grocery store at 9 in the morning where no one would hear me. I confronted her because I needed her to understand something specific. I said, "What you did was not a loyalty test. I want you to hear me say that clearly. A loyalty test implies that you were testing something on my behalf, for my benefit. What you actually did was manufacture a situation designed to make my husband fail, using private information I gave you in confidence, without my knowledge or consent. That is not loyalty testing. That is sabotage." She said, "I thought you deserved to know." I said, "You thought you deserved to see a man fail. You needed to watch it happen to someone who wasn't Marcus, because watching it happen to someone who wasn't Marcus meant you weren't alone. I understand that. I genuinely do. But understanding it is not the same as forgiving it." She said, "I'm so sorry, Sarah." I said, "I know you are." I said, "I don't know what we are now. I don't know if we're still friends. I know that you used 11 years of trust to build a trap, and I don't know how to hold both of those things at the same time." She said, "I don't know either." I said, "Then I guess we're both figuring it out." I left. I have been in therapy since the second week. My therapist, Dr. Kezia Mensah, is helping me understand something I have been struggling to separate, which is the question of what I am actually deciding. She said in our second session, "You're talking about two decisions as though they're the same decision. They're not. What you do about Ryan is one decision. What you do about your marriage is a related but separate question. And what you do about Diane is a third." I said, "They feel like the same thing." She said, "I know. They're not." She is right. I am trying to hold them separately. Ryan, a man who was pursued deliberately and skillfully by someone using a map of his vulnerabilities drawn by his wife, who failed across 6 weeks in ways that are real and documented, who stopped at a door. I do not know what I do with Ryan. I am not ready to decide. I have told him this, and he has said he will wait, which is either love or strategy, and which I am trying not to calculate. The marriage, something that exists separately from the incident, that has 4 years of real texture, that was built on things I still believe were real. Whether those things are enough, whether I am capable of rebuilding the specific trust that was damaged, whether I want to, these are questions I am living inside rather than answering. Diane, I do not know. I genuinely do not know. 11 years is not nothing. What she did is also not nothing. Those two things are coexisting in me without resolution, and I am trying to let them coexist without forcing a conclusion. This is where I am. Not resolved. Not at peace. Not in the clean narrative arc of a story that has found its ending. I am 37 years old, and I am sitting with 2 betrayals that came from opposite directions and that have left me in a space where the 2 people I trusted most are both in different kinds of wrong, and I am the one who has to decide what to build from here.
Connor called me again last week.
He said his dad had been staying at a hotel and asked if I was okay. I said I was working on it. He said, "That's enough." 15 years old. He said that's enough, like someone who has already learned that working on it is the real answer. I said, "You're a good kid, Connor." He said, "You taught me some of it." I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, "I'll see you this weekend if you want." He said, "I want." That is the part one I'm most sure of. The rest I am still figuring out. But Connor is a fixed point, and fixed points are where you build from when everything else is uncertain, and I am a person who knows how to build from a fixed point. I will figure it out. I am already figuring it out. Edit. Several people are going to ask whether Ryan and I are divorcing. As of writing this, I don't know. What I know is that I asked him to come home last week for a conversation, not a reconciliation, not a decision, a conversation. We talked for 3 hours. He said things I needed to hear said directly rather than inferred.